Hello friends, welcome to LeggLife. My name is Adam, and you'll notice something right from the beginning. It is just me in today's video. No Sherri Beth, she's actually not feeling super great, so it is just going to be me today. But the topic I'm going to be talking about is one that I know pretty darn well, because today I'm talking all about Alaska. You guys will know if you've been watching our channel recently, we've had some Alaska travel content. Our friends Deanna and Marshall visited from Tennessee, and we took them from Matanuska Glacier and Palmer, all around the Matanuska Valley, and then to the Wildlife Conservation Center, to Seward, to do a whale cruise. And this was kind of our first taste of Alaska summer activities. And in those videos, we had comments from several of you saying, Adam and Sherri, we're coming to Alaska and help. Like, we have questions, what should we do? Should we do this or this? And so I thought, you know what? Now's probably the perfect time to do an Alaska travel Q&A. So I put out a message over on our LeggLife Instagram and said, hit me with your Alaska travel questions. And you guys gave us like a lot of them. I have them all here on my phone, and there's a lot. And so I'm gonna try to get through as many as possible as I can today. So today I'm answering your Alaska travel questions. And I'm not gonna be able to get to all of the questions because there's just so many. And several of them are kind of similar, so I may kind of hit some and maybe miss others. So if I missed your question, I'm sorry. If you guys like this, maybe we will do more of them. Now, one of the things that I love is that you guys asked a crazy wide range of questions. Everything from bug spray to where you should eat, to kinds of food, to things you should see. And so this is going to be, well, it's going to be a lot of Alaska. And you guys know, if you know me, you know my love for the state of Alaska. So I'm just gonna jump into these and start with some of them. Are you guys ready? First question, will I need a winter coat in late June or early July? Okay, so this question is a little bit difficult to ask or to answer, only because that kind of depends on where you're from. Right? If you are from somewhere where you don't typically get winter, then possibly. If you're from somewhere where it gets cold and you're not used to super warm temperatures, probably not. What we tell people to do when they're visiting Alaska is pack in layers. Because on your Alaska vacation, you could experience temperatures from the 40s to the 90s, or like the 30s to the 90s, depending on when you visit. And so I would say this depends on where you're from. The things that we tell everybody to bring when it comes to clothes, like short sleeve t-shirts, polo shirts, that kind of stuff, long sleeve t-shirts, like a hoodie, a medium or lightweight winter jacket, and then like a rain jacket over top. Because for most people, unless they're from really hot environments, you can layer up if it gets too cold, or you can layer down if it gets too warm. But again, this question is difficult to answer. It's kind of like when people ask in Facebook groups, they're like, hey, is Castaway Cay too cold to swim in the Bahamas in January? And I'm like, I'm from Alaska. It is never too cold, right? But like people in Florida, maybe it is. And so I would say this depends on where you're from, but to us, the answer to the Alaska what to wear question, 100% layers. All right, next question. Ooh, best way to travel in Alaska. Rental car, can you visit good stops by train, etc. So there's lots of ways to visit and experience Alaska. Most people obviously come here via cruise ship. That's how the majority of visitors get to our state. And that's one great way to see our state, but you do miss a large part of Alaska. I really love the idea of flying into Anchorage, renting a car, and then going out to the places that you want to see, the towns you want to see. That personally, for me, that's kind of how Sherri and I like to travel. So that would be my suggestion or recommendation. The train does go a number of places. If you fly into Anchorage, you can take the train south to Seward. You can take the train north to to Talkeetna, Denali, Fairbanks, that kind of stuff. So you can go a number of places, but it's not like a, what would I say? This is a tourist train, not like a public transit train. Does that make sense? And so just kind of consider that. For me, rental car, RV is another great option because you basically have your like bed on wheels. So those to me, a couple great ways to see Alaska. Best place to get moose poop merchandise. Let me explain. Because it was funny, we actually talked about this with Marshall, Indiana. So when moose poop, probably not what you guys expected to hear on this video, it comes out in these little oval nuggets. Now, moose primarily eat things like tree bark. And so they're these little, it's kind of like sawdust pellets. And Alaskans, a very resourceful bunch. And so in a lot of gift shops, you can buy like moose poop earrings. You can buy moose poop like swizzle sticks. And so I would say if you're looking for the iconic Alaska moose poop merch, most gift shops, you can normally find something made out of moose poop. We're strange here in Alaska, and we fully admit that. Are most restaurants vegetarian friendly? Even if it's like 1 to 2 things on the menu. I would say, especially in areas like Anchorage, absolutely. Most restaurants for sure will be. If you get off of the beaten path, if you get off into some smaller towns, you normally will find a salad or 2 on a menu. But I would say that in urban areas, Fairbanks, Anchorage, Juneau, even like Ketchikan cruise towns, probably pretty easy. There may be some places like roadhouses where it might be more difficult, but we have a lot of friends who are vegetarian, a lot of friends who are vegan, and there are just more and more options all of the time. So I think you'll probably be okay. Next question, how walkable is Anchorage? Great question. Anchorage in the summertime is actually a pretty walkable city. Wintertime with snow and covered sidewalks, it's really not. I'm just being honest, it's really not. Downtown Anchorage, very walkable. We also have a ton of trails. Anchorage has an unbelievable trail system. So if what you want to do is like get out and walk for either scenery or exercise, very much so. They do a pretty good job of keeping things like sidewalks and crosswalks cleared, swept clean, that kind of stuff. So in my opinion, keeping in mind, I don't have a ton of experience with this, Anchorage is, I think, a pretty walkable city in the summer months. Outside of the summer months, it's difficult. This next question, we actually got a bunch. Has to do with bug spray. When is bug spray a must? Like, do you need it all the time? Here's what I would say. It's difficult to predict, and different parts of the state and different areas are just so different. And so I would encourage you, if you're visiting in like May, June, July, August, September, to bring bug spray, depending on where you're going. But also keep in mind, any town you visit, we can buy it at gas stations here, right? Like you just have it a lot. We normally see like a springtime mosquito hatch, right? Because the eggs, the larvae, typically hatch in the springtime, so it can be bad in the spring. Now, there are a number of factors when considering this. If we have a very high snowfall winter, a lot of times the mosquitoes are worse in the spring and summer because as the snow melts, there's more standing water for them to hatch, right? So there's a lot of things that go into play. But one interesting fact, Sherri and I actually read this earlier today. Did you know that Alaska is the only state where the mosquitoes here do not transmit disease? So every other state, there's mosquitoes. You have to think about things like West Nile and different like diseases that mosquitoes can transmit. In Alaska, no mosquitoes that transmit disease. The only state that has that. So amazing. Now, one caveat. If you are going to interior Alaska or even up north, like northern parts of Alaska, mosquitoes can swarm to the point where they like darken the sky. And so do some research on where you're going, keeping in mind that not every place in Alaska is the same when it comes to mosquitoes. We had a ton of those kind of questions. What are the best ports to look for when searching for Alaska cruises? So remember, we've never done an Alaska cruise yet. We're cruising with Princess here in less than 40 days. So I don't necessarily know. Here's what I will say. I absolutely love Skagway and I love Juneau as towns, and I loved Ketchikan when I was there. And so those 3 are on a lot of cruises. So I would say those 3. Juneau is one of my favorite towns in Alaska. Like Juneau to me is just so naturally, just absolutely stunning. Absolutely stunning. What are things to do in Alaska that educate you and celebrate Indigenous people? I love this question so much. I have a lot of ideas. So I'm going to tie this to another question that we got, which was, what kind of gifts can you buy in Alaska? So our First Nations people here in Alaska, our Native Alaskans, are world-class craftsmen, craftswomen. The art that they create it's unbelievable. It's stunning around the entire state. And so I would say one of the places to look for if you're looking for a gift, like something to bring home, look for a place that you can support a local artist. Just like any tourism destination around the world, we have gift shops full of mass-produced cheap junk. It's what it is, right? But if you look, you can find unbelievable pieces of art that are made by locals, especially here in Alaska, made by Native Alaskans that are amazing. The kind of pieces that you will have for the rest of your life and pass on to your kids, kind of thing, like legacy pieces. And then as far as places to go, in Alaska, one of my favorite, well, I have two of them. One of my favorite is the Alaska Native Heritage Center. It's right here in Anchorage, and it is such a great place to get a good overview about our Native peoples around the entire state. So it's not just focused on Native lands here in Anchorage, it's focused really on the whole state. So the Alaska Native Heritage Center to me is one of the best without a doubt. The other one that I really loved when we went to Utqiagvik last year, Barrow, the Inupiaq Heritage Museum was spectacular. Now I know that's not a place in Alaska that most people go, but the artists and the craftsmen there, and then the museum, the way that it taught about what life and culture is like in that part of Alaska, was something I will remember without a doubt for the absolute rest of my life. Let's see, best place to stay. This kind of thing is hard, and I got a lot of these questions because every person is different with what they like, right? A place that would be great for Sherri and I would not be great for somebody else, right? And so I think it's really difficult for me to answer that question. Anchorage has a number of hotels, all the hotel chains you're used to. So if that's normally where you stay, we have those. We also have a ton of great Airbnbs. You guys are always welcome to, in fact, we got an email recently that I haven't responded to, sorry, asking like places in Anchorage to avoid. Even that's a difficult question. I will say, use this as a resource. If you're coming to Anchorage and you find an Airbnb you like, you can always email us and be like, Adam, is this in a safe area? And I'll tell you. But as far as like where, that's a little bit difficult because that's so, every person is different, right? I will say, our favorite hotel in Anchorage is the Captain Cook Hotel in downtown Anchorage. We got engaged there. We got married there. We've spent lots of anniversaries there. It's one of the most iconic hotels in Alaska, so that's one of our favorites. All right, we're flying into Anchorage at 2 p.m. Where should we stop for lunch en route to Seward? I have so many thoughts. The first one that comes to mind, if it's open, is a place in Hope, Alaska called the Dirty Skillet. While Auburn was up here, we actually went there. Some of you guys may remember that vlog. And it was one of the most amazing, like, hidden gem places that we went while she was here. Now, the Hope Cutoff is on your way to Seward. You'll see the signs to Hope, but check and see if it's open when you're driving through. There are some other great places in Girdwood, which is about 45 minutes south of Anchorage. If you're just looking for like a quick pick something up as you drive, Coast Pizza is so good. There is the West Rib, there's Chair 5. Both of those are in Girdwood. Actually, I don't know if it's called the West Rib anymore. I'm not sure. So if you're looking for something in Anchorage, downtown we have Glacier Brew House. Oh my gosh, we have Simon and Seaforth's, which are great lunch places. Moose's Tooth's our classic pizza place. There's a lot of options. But if Dirty Skillet is open on the way to Seward, check that out. You guys, I know I'm blazing through these, and I'm not even I'm not even a quarter of the way through, so there's no way we're gonna get through all of these, but I'm gonna keep going, okay? What are must-visit shops, food or gifts in Ketchikan? Okay, some of you already know what I'm gonna say. There's a shop owned by our friend Springberry in Woodlands, in Ketchikan, called Woodlands. It will be our very first stop when we go to Ketchikan later this summer. Spring and her husband not only own the shop, they do all of the designs and they do all of the printing right there in Ketchikan. Again, this is one of those Alaska businesses that when you support it, you are supporting that family, that community, that business, because it's all done right there. They have a ton of variety of things in their shop. And again, I haven't been to Ketchikan in years, so I'll probably have more answers when we go there. But for me, stop number one when we get to Ketchikan will be Woodlands. It's the store that just selfishly, I think every person who visits Ketchikan should support. They're the best Alaska family. Like, I want to see them succeed so flippin' much. So, Woodlands, Alaska, it's in Ketchikan. Check it out. Ideally, how long would you vacation for? A week, 2 weeks, a couple of days? Just move here. Just move. Like, I've been here since I was 3 and I'm still not tired of it, and there's still things that I'm seeing and discovering. So just like sell your stuff, tell your family you love them, pack your bags, and get to Alaska. But if you can't do that, then I would say whatever time you have. Alaska, I think you can do a great 3-day vacation in Alaska. I think you could do a great 3-week vacation in Alaska. But know that whether you're here for 3 days or 3 weeks or 3 months, there are things you're not going to be able to see and experience. There is just so much to do. So I would say as much time as you have, and absolutely know that whatever time you give Alaska, Alaska will fill it, because there is so much great stuff here. Okay, I already touched on that. The timing of this is spectacular. Great local excursions near the port. Alternative options to Disney Cruise Line excursions. So, I have one. And this is one that I've just learned of, and it's one that you guys are going to get to see in our cruise vlogs. I haven't talked about this in a vlog, and my level of geeking out about this is at like a 13 on a scale of 10. So, in Skagway, Alaska, you guys will remember our friends own Klondike Gifts, Klondike Electric Bikes, an amazing couple who lives in Skagway. They moved there from Orlando, Florida. They just have like the coolest story. I was messaging with them, and they've kind of expanded their business, and they have a new option. They bought a brand new electric Ford Mustang that you can rent in Skagway, and you can drive through the Yukon, across the Canadian border if you have like your passports and vaccine stuff, which you would if you're cruising, into like the Yukon up through Canada. In the day that you're there, like in the hours that you have, and it's an electric vehicle, you don't even have to fill it up with gas when you come back. This is the kind of stuff that nobody gets to see or do. When people go to Skagway, everybody does the train. We did the train. It was beautiful. But while we did the train, I saw across the mountain the road. And I remember thinking, that would be cool. Well, when we're in Skagway, we're actually going to get to use the brand new electric Ford Mustang to drive through the Yukon, the mountains, the lakes, into Canada. In a sports car that is an electric vehicle, good for the environment. I'm geeking out. Like, I am so unbelievably excited to get to do this when we're there. Now, here's the thing. They have one car. And so when there's a cruise ship in town, that's going to go fast. So I'm actually going to link down below to their website. If you're coming on a cruise this summer and you think that would be as amazing as I do, go get it, because, like I said, like one a day. And you can't have the day that we're there because we've already taken it. I'm so excited to bring you along as we drive a sports car through the Yukon. That's so cool. That is so cool. I got so distracted. I'm sorry. Oh my gosh. Must visit places in Alaska. Alaska. That's Alaska. There's too many of those to list. Ooh, you have 3 days in Alaska. Where do you go and what do you see? Good question. Know that Alaska is the kind of place that it is so big and it is so different with different regions of our state that really you have to consume Alaska in multiple bites. It's like eating an elephant, right? You don't eat it in one sitting. And so I would say that if you have 3 days, my opinion, fly into Anchorage, where most people fly into anyway. Rent a car. We prefer Hertz or Dollar Thrifty. Those are like 3 bomb car rental places here. And then I want you to take 1 day and I want you to drive north to the town of Talkeetna, Alaska. Talkeetna is one of those iconic little Alaska towns. There's a lot of rumor that that's the town that the TV show Northern Exposure was based on. It is the jumping off point for flight scene tours of Denali, the amazing, beautiful mountain here. There's some great food there. It's just a great, cute little Alaska town. And then you could, along the way, stop in Palmer. There's just lots of stuff to do as you head north for a day. Then I want you to have a day where you head south down to Seward, Alaska. And I want you to go on a cruise with major marine tours. Now you could do a full day cruise, you could do a half day cruise, whatever you want. But get out there, see whales, see sea life, see glaciers, and experience like the water part of Alaska. And then for your 3rd day, a couple options. You could overnight in Seward and have another day just to kind of explore the town, go to the Sea Life Center. Or you could have a day here in Anchorage to do like the Anchorage Museum, the Native Heritage Center, and then have like a really great seafood dinner downtown at either Brewhouse, Simon & Seifert's, or 49th State Brewing Company. You'd be in Alaska for 3 days. You get to experience our food. You get to experience our mountains and like towns like Talkeetna, and you get to experience a lot of like our ocean and our sea life in just 3 days. And then immediately start planning your trip back because you will have just gotten a tiny taste and you will want to come back. Oh my gosh, there are so many questions still. We're going to do this. We're going to get through at least a portion of them. Where's your favorite place you've been in Alaska? It's a really hard question, but there is one that comes to my mind. We've taken you there on a few vlogs, and it's in Juneau. It is the Shrine of St. Therese. Sherri and I are not Catholic. This is a Catholic shrine. It is outside of Juneau, maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And it is, I don't have words for it. It's a place that just feels sacred. It is so peaceful and it's so serene. And there has never been a time that I've gone there, and I've gone there dozens of times, there's never been a time that I've gone there that I don't leave feeling like soul level full. The natural beauty and the peace of the place, to me, I think makes it my favorite place in Alaska. That's what I would say. I have a million, but that's what I would say. Where/how do you even start to plan an Alaska vacation? Help. Right here. YouTube and Google. Number one, think of the kind of things that first of all, think of the time you have realistically. Because the time you have will help determine the things you can do. If you have 3 days, you're very limited. If you have 5 days, you're still pretty limited, but less so, right? If you have 2 weeks, it's a different story. So think of the time you have and then start looking at the kind of things that Alaska offers. There are some people who come to Alaska who say, you know what, the number one thing I want to do is, my number one priority list is like whales. I want to see whales. And so that will help determine what you're going to see and where you're going to go, right? And so determine how much time you have and then start thinking about your priorities of what you would like to do and see in Alaska. And then watch videos on that stuff. Take notes. Have a little Alaska notebook that you're jotting down stuff in. Feel free to ask us questions. We're here to help you guys. And so I would say the way you start is just by figuring out how much time you have and then figuring out what your options are even to do, and then build a trip from there. Best thing to do in June. Actually, I'm going to answer a question that's kind of tied into that. A lot of people said, what's the best time to come to Alaska? To me, June, July, August are the 3 largest tourism months. My favorite time would be June and the first half of July. August, September can get a little bit rainy. Now, some years they're stunningly beautiful and June and July rain, right? There's no way to control that. So just know that best months, in my opinion, I love June, I love early July. That's what I would say. Best things to do in June. This is difficult. Again, what do you want to do? Right? Pretty much everything that Alaska offers is open in June. And so this depends on what you want. Do you want whales? Go south to Seward. Or like, Southeast Alaska, Juneau, that kind of stuff. Do you want hikes? There's a ton of hikes that are going to be open, trails open. Things are starting to like bloom in June. And so again, what do you want to do? Because in June, everything will pretty much be open. Oh my gosh. Coming to Alaska on a cruise in 13 days. Think I'll see whales? This is so difficult because I think you will, but I don't know you will. That's the problem with wildlife. It's wild and we don't control it. It was funny when Deanna and Marshall were here because we saw everything on their trip up until the last day except moose. And moose are the thing that Sherri and I see the most here in Alaska. Like here in Anchorage, we see moose all the time. Yet we hadn't seen a single moose while Deanna and Marshall were here. And it was, honestly, it was really annoying me. And so as we were driving to them to the airport, I was like, you know what? I'm not letting you leave Alaska till we find a moose. And so I went driving, and fortunately, about a half an hour before we had to have them to the airport, we found a moose. But again, we found beluga whales and humpback whales before we found a moose. So it's just hard to say. Here's what I will say. Even if you don't find whales, which by the way, I really hope you do, I believe you're gonna have an absolutely unbelievable trip to Alaska. Best Alaskan foods. Seafood to me. I would say there's a couple must-do things. I think king crab is a must-do. We have great oysters here in Alaska if you're into that. Just Alaskan seafood, salmon, obviously, halibut, obviously. And then have a reindeer hot dog. A reindeer hot dog with grilled onions. Oh man, so good. Try some reindeer sausage. But really, I do think king crab is one of the must-do things. Best towns to drive to around Anchorage with like a driving tour. So I mentioned them earlier. I really love Talkeetna, which is a couple hours north, and Seward, which is a couple hours south. Now, I know that a couple hours may not be what you consider when we're saying towns around Anchorage, but for us, that's kind of a short driving day, right? Alaska's a huge state. So both of those are day trips, in my opinion. I do think if you're coming to Anchorage and you only get to choose one, I would go south to Seward simply because the drive is so much spectacular, so much more spectacular. The drive along Turnagain Arm it's breathtaking. It's absolutely breathtaking. And then as you're kind of getting past the arm, you're heading up and you're driving through mountain passes the entire way. It's absolutely beautiful. So you guys, there are so many more questions on this. Things like what's one place that everyone should see or do, top 3 things must do for first timers. We're looking at glacier flight scene. You guys, there's no way I can answer all of these questions. So I think I'm gonna stop this video now. Here's what I'm gonna say though. If you have other comments, let me know down below. Also, do you want me to do more of these? Would you prefer, because I mean, we have a whole nother video of questions that I haven't gotten to. So would you like to see more of these Alaska travel videos, kind of answering your questions? I hope this has been helpful, and I do want to end with like one final thought. We have had friends who have come to Alaska and the weather was cloudy and rainy and terrible, and we didn't get to see a ton of wildlife, yet they still left with their minds blown about the beauty of Alaska. We have had friends come to Alaska, and we've had, like Dan and Marshall, who had perfect weather the entire time they were here, and we got to see basically everything that Alaska offers as far as wildlife goes. And their minds were blown, and it's a trip they'll never forget. And so I think for me, that's one of my kind of takeaways from the last couple of years, is that if you come to Alaska, you are going to see things that you will never forget for the rest of your life. It is a natural, I'm looking out my studio window and at the mountain range right there. And I'm realizing that simply like this view that I have every day from our home is the kind of thing that some people wait their whole life to see. And so, yes, there are a lot of details when planning an Alaska vacation. Yes, there's a million what ifs. But don't let those what ifs, don't let those fear of what if I don't book the perfect trip, don't let those things keep you from experiencing Alaska. If you only have 3 days, you will have 3 days in one of the most beautiful places in the entire earth. It is worth it. So you guys know that I'm totally biased because I love this place that we get to call home. But however much time you have, whatever it is you want to do, I genuinely believe Alaska is the kind of place that every single person should get to experience for themselves. In fact, it's one of the reasons we had a comment on one of our videos recently from a lady who basically said, thank you for sharing so much, because she's past the age where she can travel by herself. And so the way that she experiences Alaska is through our videos. And so it's one of the reasons that I'm just so excited about filming and bringing you guys along, is for the people who can't get here to see Alaska for themselves. They still get to see it here through our lens. But for those of you who can travel, get here. It's not that hard to get here. There are direct flights from cities all across the country. It is not as intimidating or as inaccessible as a lot of people think. So I hope we get to see you here in Alaska this summer or next summer. You guys make it happen. Come on, we got crab and halibut and salmon, and we got mountains, and we have eagles and whales. What more do you want? Friends, love you guys so much, and I'll see you on the next LeggLife video.